All right, welcome everybody. I am super excited tonight because I have a good friend of mine in the house who you all know. I think you all know him. Anyway, Cal started off. I can't remember where I first met you or what year it was, but I know you came on one of my first trainings when I used to bring people to the auctions in Las Vegas and teach how to do that. And the thing I love about Cal is that whenever he learns something, he doesn't just apply what he learns, but he actually takes it even further. And he's always researching, well, how can I do this better? And so I end up learning a lot of stuff from Cal because I teach him how to get started, and then he goes and just does whatever it takes to make deals happen. And so Cal is actually much more of an expert at notes than I am. I've done a few of them. I've created some notes and sold some notes, but I've never bought. I think you're not buying the distressed ones now, you're buying the performing ones. And I've sold performing notes that I've created in the past. But Cal has, I think you actually came on when we were teaching notes, and then Cal went on to go and learn how to do it in much more detail. So he's here for 3 sessions tonight, a week from tonight, and then we're going to skip 1 week because I forget where I think I'm going to be on a ship somewhere again. And then the following week, he's going to be back for the 3rd session. So Cal, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, great to be back. Thanks for having me.
I wouldn't miss
And
it.
great
How's
to see
everything
so
going?
many. Been going good. Yeah, things are great. Great to see so many familiar faces. And I love the fact that you've got this group of people that are dedicated, and it's what, a year or 2, I think, since I did the wholesale course, and you guys are still here, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I can't
That
remember
shows
when we did that. It
feels like a long time ago.
feels like a long time. We got to
Yeah.
bring it back more often. So, but now we get you for
Yeah,
free.
but it's just really cool to see all the same faces and not people coming in and then whatever, getting bored or distracted or whatever. And it's just so cool to see all you guys still here attending these, and that's awesome. So
There's also a lot
good to
of
see
people,
the
by the way, who watch the recordings because we post
yeah.
every single session is posted. So, um,
Yeah.
oh, Mark, did you have a question or you're just waving? If you have a question, you can unmute.
I know. I was just saying I'm one of the ones who went through the entire 16 sessions as a recording as opposed to
Oh,
being there
nice.
live. I was just waving my hand to identify
Ah,
that. Yes, I was one of those.
oh, yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, terrific stuff.
Well, nice to see you live.
There you
All
go.
right. Yeah.
So the stage is
So,
yours. If you need to
okay.
share, you can do that.
Yeah.
You're set for that, and
Yep.
all yours.
Okay. Yeah. So Mike asked me to come back and talk about note investing. And I'll just give you a quick background because a lot of you guys know me from the wholesale training. And so basically, after doing the wholesale training, and I don't know if you guys knew or if I mentioned last time that my boots on the ground guy in Houston, he ended up getting a really good opportunity to basically take over a HVAC company, and it was something he didn't want to pass up on. And so I lost my boots on the ground, and I've been hustling really hard, probably burning myself out a bit wholesaling from up here in Canada. And I started looking back and was like, well, what is my main goal? Like, why did I get into real estate? Like right when I met Mike, what was my main goal? And it was always cash flow. And that was something, as you guys know, that Mike has always preached, like the value of cash flow. That's one of the big things to look for, right? And that's why I got into it. Like I've read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad and all the Robert Kiyosaki stuff, and he has a game called Cash Flow. So I started looking at my path through real estate, and I was like, okay, so I feel like I got a little off course because I was wholesaling and I was doing some flips and I was doing a lot of one-time deals where you put in all this work and you get paid, and the pay's great, but it's a lot of work. And I was like, but I'm not building this passive stream, like all these passive streams of income so that I could ever stop. Like if I stopped, went on vacation, my whole business was on hold, right? And maybe even crumbling, right? And so I just started thinking I need to get back to the reason that I got into real estate, which was passive income streams. And I'm sure a lot of you guys, it's the same thing, right? Like time freedom, being able to have income coming in when you're not when you're not working, right? When you're traveling like Mike or sleeping or whatever it is, right? What's important to you. So just like you guys, I happen to, I don't even know why or how, but a couple of years ago, I watched the presentation that was in the Wolfpack that Scott Carson did on note investing. And I was really drawn to it because I have done a bunch of owner finance deals in Texas, where we had properties and we sold them with owner financing and became the bank, and our buyer paid us, you know, a down payment, and then every month they owed us principal and interest payment. And that experience was pretty neat because I love the fact that I could get those monthly payments coming in, but it was really hands off. Like, even as a landlord, and there's lots of great things about being a landlord, but there's, as you guys probably know, a lot of bad things or frustrating things about being a landlord, tenants and toilets and all that stuff. So, but owning a note, none of that was there. And so when I saw Scott's presentation to the Wolfpack, I was really intrigued, and I pursued it further because I was like, yeah, this is what I think will get me back to where I want to be. So a few years later, I'm here to talk about note investing and my experience so far. So I'm not an expert. I haven't been doing this for decades, but I'm going to share what I've learned so far with you guys, and kind of using my past real estate experience over 15 years now to kind of like present it from that perspective. So there's the intro, and I'll share my screen. All right. And I'm going to give credit where credit is due to my VA, because she did this presentation up for me, and I'm amazed at how beautiful it looks. So if she's ever sees the recording, props to
I'm gonna have to
Marielle.
hire her too.
Yeah, no, she's awesome. She did it in an hour. Like, I gave her just the slides with, you know, black font, and then she came back with this. So anyways,
Nice.
yeah. Okay. So today, well, I guess I'll give you a little bit quick background again. So I live in Calgary, Canada. I'm a Canadian. I've been investing in US real estate since basically the year I met Mike, which was like 2008 or 9 or 10, around there. Mike infected me with the bug of US real estate over Canadian, and told me all the benefits of investing in the US, and I haven't given up yet. I haven't stopped. So I still 100% agree with Mike, and I support him moving and looking south of the border for real estate deals, because that's been my life too. And I owe a lot of that to Mike, because he influenced me and taught me a lot of what I know, and kind of helped me guide my career. So these are my kids and my wife, Laura. This is Maya and Sorsha. And yeah, we still live in Calgary, but all the deals I've done have been in the US. So that's me. So what are mortgage notes? This isn't, maybe some of you might be a very easy answer, but some of you maybe not. When I was first getting started in real estate, I had no idea what a mortgage note was. I didn't know what a note was. I didn't know why we call money bank notes. The word note seemed weird to me. Being a guitar player, I only know those kind of notes. And I'd never had when I was started in university and I started learning about real estate, I'd never had my own mortgage. So I didn't even really know how a mortgage worked. But as I got more and more into real estate investing, through tax deeds and owner financing and getting hard money loans on fix and flips, you start to learn a little bit more about what it is. But I don't know if people actually explain it very well. So basically, a mortgage note is two things, at least in the US. It's actually two pieces of paper. And the word note comes from promissory note, which is like a promise to pay. It's kind of like an IOU. And a promissory note kind of outlines all the rules between the lender and the borrower. Okay. So it tells the amount of the loan, the interest rate, how long they have to pay it back, what your payments are. Is it interest only loan, or is it amortized over a long period of time, etc. So it's all the rules that you as the borrower are agreeing to, and you as the lender are agreeing to. Okay. And then the mortgage is a different document, and I never knew that. I thought it was just one thing. But a mortgage, also known as a deed of trust in some states. In Georgia, I know it's called a security deed typically. But what this document is it's a separate piece of paper that acts as the document that secures the collateral to the loan or to the lender. So basically, if you have a house that you're getting a mortgage on, or a car, or whatever it is, that document, the mortgage document or the deed of trust, is securing and acting as the security for the lender, so that if you don't pay, that lender has the right to foreclose or take action, take back that asset, or whatever it might be, is laid out in that document. So without a deed of trust or a mortgage, I don't think you could actually have any security. So I could give you a note, a promise to pay, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to take my house if you lent me money to buy the house without that mortgage document. So it's actually two pieces of paper. Okay. And the other thing is, the deed to a house is a completely different piece of paper. So you could have a mortgage on something, but you don't necessarily own it as the lender, right? You have security interest in it. You have your money is secured, so that if they don't perform, you get to foreclose or take the property back, but you don't own the property, right? Because when we buy a house, we get a mortgage at Wells Fargo or Bank of America or whatever. We get the deed, we get ownership, but we still owe that lender, right? Because of these other documents. So that's a mortgage note. And so as a real estate investor, you don't necessarily have to buy a piece of property to make income from that property. And we can essentially control a piece of real estate by becoming the lender, becoming the bank. And so we have all of our money secured to that physical piece of real estate that we invest in it when we buy a note. Kind of like when you own a piece of property, right? You have that security. It's not going anywhere. There's going to be insurance so that if it burns down, you get your money back. If it, floods or whatever it is, you're insured. If you do it right, you've got insurance, and that piece of property is going to go up in value. Typically, it's not going to disappear overnight like a stock. So it's a pretty cool thing, because you've got all your investments still secured to a property, but you don't have to worry about the day-to-day maintenance and repairs and all of that. Okay. And there's different lien positions. So if I go and get a bank mortgage to buy a house, I'm probably going to get a first lien mortgage. Let's say though, later on, I want to remodel my kitchen because it is dated and old. And so I go to the same bank or maybe a different bank and say, I need some money to do the kitchen rental. Well, they might lend me a second mortgage that's in second lien position behind that first mortgage lender. Okay. And so the lien position is very important when you're investing in notes, because whoever's in first lien position, they get paid first. And so if a property gets sold at a foreclosure auction, the first lien lender gets paid. That second lien lender might not get paid if the property doesn't sell for high enough. Okay, so I don't do a lot with second lien, but I don't do anything with second liens. I don't buy them. There's definitely ways to invest in second liens, but we're going to talk about investing in first lien mortgages through this 3 days. And if you guys have any questions, just feel free to put up your hand and I'll address, one or two at a time. If it gets like crazy and we get off track, maybe we'll save it for the end. But if you have like just a quick question about something, just raise your hand. Okay, so I said a lot of the benefits, but one of the main reasons people want to buy notes is because of the passive income, right? And that's from the monthly payments that the borrower is making. Okay, so if you're the bank, that payment, that principal and interest payment comes to you every month as long as the borrower is doing what they signed up for, right? And we call it performing. Okay. And like I said, there's lots of benefits to owning rentals, but as a note investor, it's kind of similar because you get that monthly cash flow coming in, the monthly payments, but you don't have to worry about anything breaking. You don't have to worry about vacancies, marketing your property when it goes vacant, etc. Right? And that's a pretty cool thing, because when I've owned rentals, I get my rent every month, and if I'm a responsible landlord, I'm going to be putting a certain amount aside somewhere in case something breaks, right? To cover the repairs, cover the vacancy, the marketing. If it needs a new roof, I better have money to replace the roof if it starts leaking. Same with the furnace or the AC, right? So you have to always be keeping money on the side. And when you own a note, that's the owner of the property, the borrower that's living there, that's their responsibility, and it's not really yours, which is kind of cool. And then the other great thing is it's really hands off. So it fits this passive income idea of like being able to go away and travel or whatever, because if you're doing it right and you want to have freedom, you're going to hire a loan servicing company to handle your loans that you own or handle your notes. And they do all the work. They do all the bookkeeping and accounting. So they make sure that they're keeping track of when the borrower pays. If they're late, they're going to send out a notice. They're going to charge whatever the late fee is. They're going to keep track of how much has been paid down on the mortgage each year, how much goes to principal, how much goes to interest, etc. So they basically do all the boring accounting. They do most of the borrower outreach, which is great. So you don't have to really worry about, hassling the borrower if they don't make their payments. They'll do all that for you, which is really cool. And then if the borrower stops paying, and we're going to talk about that more, we don't really have to do too much either, because we're going to use a real estate attorney or a foreclosure attorney, and they're going to handle a lot of that work. So you don't really need to be a foreclosure expert to be in the note business. You just need to have people on your team, like a good foreclosure attorney in that state that knows how to do it. So, and then another great thing is it's a way to actually acquire properties. So if you target non-performing mortgage notes, which are notes where the borrowers are not paying, you can actually foreclose or negotiate what's called a deed in lieu of a foreclosure and take ownership of that property. And so if you got that note at a really nice discount and then took the property back, well, now you've got a nice piece of real estate that you now own, and you can fix and flip it or keep it as a rental or do whatever you want with it. Okay, so it's another way of actually acquiring real estate itself. And then it's actually, so there's multiple exit strategies. We're going to cover that later, but it's actually a lot easier to buy than I thought. Like when I was going into this as a wholesaler who's bought a lot of properties, I was expecting, title companies and lawyers and earnest money, right? You have to put down an earnest money deposit when you're making an offer. I thought it was going to be the exact same thing as buying a house, and it surprised me a lot, but it's not. It's more of just a one-on-one transaction typically. It's between you and whoever's selling the note. You can involve an attorney, but you're really like wiring the funds back and forth. You're dealing directly with the seller. And the great thing is because these are usually banks that are selling the notes or a note investor, you're never dealing with all the seller drama. And any of you guys that have taken action and made offers on houses, I'm sure eventually you're going to come to some of those sellers that are just a pain in the butt, right? Like they've got endless drama, maybe families like fighting over, the sale price or whatever. And a good real estate investor has to learn how to diffuse all that to make a good deal happen. That's a benefit for everybody involved. And it can be a lot of drama. And it was refreshing to see that when you buy a note, it's more just about what your bid price is and if they accept it, and there's not a lot of that. So that was really a breath of fresh air, I'd say.
Hey, Cal, I'm not sure if you can see, because I know when you're in presentation mode, you can't always see, but Sean has his hand up. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, how's it going, Kyle?
Going good.
Good. Hey, I got a quick question. So those loan officers that would typically administer, do all the back end, the accounting, make sure payments are on time, is that a fixed set fee? Is it a percentage of what's coming in? Just a general rough idea of the cost for something like that.
Yeah, it's usually a set fee per loan, and it's usually really small. That's another thing I was surprised at, is how small it is. Like it's going to be, depending on the value of the loan or the payments, it's going to be like $15, $20, $40, something like that. Pretty small. If you're getting them to take on a foreclosure and send out notices and that kind of thing, they're going to charge a higher fee. But just to service a paying note, it's pretty cheap.
Awesome. $15, $20, whatever a month that is, right?
Yeah. And the more volume you do, typically servicing companies will give you a discount as you grow. So.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And accounting is exciting. I agree, Michael. I am sorry. I misspoke. All right. So some of the drawbacks.
Hey, Cal, did you define what EMD was on the last slide?
Oh, sorry, earnest money. So, when you make an offer on a property, you usually have to put earnest money down. And then you've got a certain period for your due diligence, right, before you close on that deal. And if you're a very busy, like a wholesaler or a real estate investor that's making a lot of offers, it can get pretty expensive, right? Because, you know, if you're buying 5 houses at once or something, like your big flipping operation, you're going to have to put earnest money down on each one of those properties, and that's a big chunk of cash. Whereas with notes, there's no earnest money. So you can make offers on as many notes as you think you can handle. And if you have to back out of them, you actually don't, there's no money put down. And so you don't lose it if you back out of the deal. So you just have to have a good reason why you're backing out. But you don't have to, there's nothing on the line. All right. Yeah. So one of the drawbacks that rental properties have is you can't always access the appreciation. So same thing as like if you have a mortgage on your home, and like here in Calgary, that's how many people made and built wealth over the last 2 decades, is because housing prices went up as oil and gas did really well. And so people had a mortgage, you know, they have a 30-year, or sorry, not 30 here, but like a 20-year mortgage, and property value goes up, right? And you as the homeowner get to have that, that's your equity. It's not your bank's equity, right? When you have a mortgage. And it's the same when you own a note. So appreciation is helpful as a note holder or a note investor. You want your property that you're securing your investment to go up in value because you have more equity protection and security, but you can't cash in on that equity typically. Okay, so that's a benefit of owning rental properties. And you are a bit at the whim of the borrower or, you know, the property owner that's paying on the note, because if they sell that property or they refinance and pay you out, you're out. Like your investment's over. You got your cash back. And if they stop paying, well, then you need to take some action. And there's a bit of a smaller buyer pool. So like if you own a piece of property, say a rental, and you want to get out of it, you're tired of landlording, or you have a, you know, whatever the reason is, it's easier to just hire a realtor and sell it off, where there's a bit of a smaller buyer pool for notes. But it's not impossibly small. There's definitely note buyers, and there's hedge funds out there that buy notes in bulk. And so you can sell them. It's just a little bit more challenging. And you can't just walk into a bank and get funding to buy a note. You can't get a hard money lender to finance your note purchases. So there's different ways that you can use private investors to buy notes, but you can't really get financing very easy on a note if you want to buy one. Okay, so there's lots of different notes out there, and I recommend whatever you're comfortable and what you know. So some people, like I prefer residential first lien mortgages because I understand residential real estate. That's all I've done my whole career. But there's people out there that really understand commercial properties, and there's huge opportunity out there to buy commercial notes, both first and, or well, I guess, yeah, there's some seconds. And you can also buy non-performing loans or performing loans. And performing loans, as I said, are the borrower has been paying month after month. They're current on their payments, and you're just taking over the bank spot, and now they're paying you. A non-performing loan, we're going to get into a little bit more, but that's where the borrower is having trouble making payments, or maybe they've died even, and they've stopped making payments for a very long time. You can buy those loans as well. And a lot of times you can get them at a steeper discount than a performing loan for obvious reasons, because it's not currently paying. Then there's a market for owner finance notes. And this is what Mike said he's done before. And I did a couple when I started, is creating a note when you sell a piece of property. And I'm not sure, Mike, if you've had any speakers come and talk about that much about owner financing, have you?
No, I don't think,
Okay.
well, we talked a little bit about seller financing, but not in relation to, you know, selling the note after.
Okay. Yeah. So there's people, like I bought notes from people that buy property cheap. They'll maybe fix it up, and then they'll sell the note and then cash out and then go buy another property. And so their whole business model is creating notes. And what they do is once they have the property ready, they sell it to someone that can't qualify for a bank mortgage. So maybe they have poor credit, or, you know, a recent foreclosure on their credit, or bankruptcy, or maybe they are self-employed, so they can't qualify. But they will owner finance the house to them, get a down payment and create a brand new note and then sell it off. So there's a whole market out there to buy notes that other real estate investors have created through seller financing or owner financing. And then there's something called a contract for deed. I'm not going to go too deep into that, and a lease option, which are very similar to a mortgage. They have differences, but you can also buy those contracts as well. And then now that borrower, buyer is now paying you. So there's lots of different options out there what you can buy. All right. Any questions so far? All right. What ski area? Sorry, I missed
Mark
that
has
one.
a hand up there.
The ski area was Lake Louise in Banff. Mark has
On
his
my
hand up?
on my list. Yeah, I had a question. So I just want to understand in terms of the relative to like a conventional mortgage in the US, whether you're an investor or you're an owner. I mean, it usually requires 20-30% down on the purchase price. Can you just outline, or is this too early in the presentation, like what the financial interactions are in terms of a note? Because I've seen a couple of your offers, but I still don't really have a clear picture of like the money flow in terms of cash out from an investor. I mean, I understand the cash in. I understand, that you're holding, basically taking over, being the beneficiary of a mortgage if the bank has a non-performing loan going on. But it's not really clear, like if Lee and I were going to go in on a note on our own, like what does it take financially to do that? And what kind of team do you need to support it once it's out there?
Good question. Okay, I'm going to go to a case study then. I'm going to skip this section just for a minute. There's like a couple. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So here's an example of one that I bought last year in Laredo, Texas. And this was actually a manufactured home. And this was a note that was created by an investor. And so he actually bought the lot, puts on manufactured homes that he buys, and then he sells the property and creates a note. Okay. So, and stop me if I'm not answering your question, Mark. Okay. But so the property value, we got a realtor to check the value. And based on comparables, it was about $100,000 in value. Okay. He had sold this property to the current owners. It doesn't say on here. I think it was like 75,000. Okay. And that was about 2 years before I bought the note. And so these borrowers had been paying on time every month. It was a performing note. And this investor sold the note to me for 51,000. Okay. So we were able to buy it at a discount. And this is what I was meaning about how his whole business model is to create these notes, sell them. He was obviously in for less than 51,000 and get his money back. And he just keeps doing it, rinse and repeat. So he sold it to me for 51,000, even though the borrower owed 70,000, well, almost 71,000. Okay. So right there was like a bit of equity that eventually we can cash in on, either when that borrower sells the house or refinances with a bank. Whatever we get paid out, basically, we would capture that. Now that borrower, the interest rate on their mortgage right now is 12%. So pretty high. And it's pretty common with owner financing that the rate that is being offered is going to be a lot higher than if you go to a traditional bank like Wells Fargo. And the reason for that is because these people typically can't go to Wells Fargo and qualify. So you're offering a service, you're offering them a house with financing, and you can charge more because they don't really have any other, there's no competition at a lower rate. So owner finance notes are usually higher. And then the monthly payment. So that borrower at 12%, it was a 30-year loan, works out to $728 a month in principal and interest payments. And so that's the cash flow that we're collecting every month. Okay. But we didn't buy the note for the amount owing, the 70,000. So we're not making a 12% return. we're actually making a 17% return because we only invested, and this is me and a funding partner, actually someone from the Wolfpack that I met. We only invested 51,000. So the rate of return that we're getting is actually 17. So buying a note at a discount, you can really raise your yields or your return on investment far higher sometimes if you get the right discount than what the actual interest rate is on the loan that the borrower's paying. So that's how you get into a note like that. Did that answer your question, or is there more to it, Mark, that you were wondering?
Just one distinction that I would ask. So you basically put in 51,000, and unlike a typical acquisition on a fix and flip or, you know, an outright purchase, there wasn't closing costs, there wasn't doc stamps, and other things like that. It was basically 51,000. The note got transferred, the note and the lien got transferred to you and your partner.
Yeah.
And then you're receiving the 728.26. And who's servicing that? Who's collecting and dispersing?
It's a company called Covey Financial, and they're in Texas, but they service quite a few states.
Okay.
And so yeah, that's a good question. So due diligence costs, I usually factor in about $500. It might be a little bit high, but I always get a broker price opinion, BPO, which is kind of like a realtor CMA, but a little bit more in detail, because they go to the property and they see if there's any external damage that needs to be repaired and that kind of thing. So a broker price opinion, and that's usually about, I don't know, it depends on where you go, but like, let's just say $100, 75 to 150 max. And then we always get a title search, just like you would when buying any property. You want to see what kind of liens are on the property, any like tax liens, anything like that, any IRS liens, something that could get in your way or cause you problems. And we also want to see the title history of the property to make sure that that owner actually that bought that property is actually, you know, the owner. There's no breaks in title that could cause problems. There's no issues with the mortgage being transferred over time. So we look for all those kind of errors. And then you may want to hire someone to actually go drive by and do a more detailed assessment of, like, you know, what's going on. Is the borrower taking care of the property? What's the neighborhood look like? So I usually pay about $500 for that. And then, yeah, just notary fees, if there's any fees. So there's not a lot of costs, you know, maybe maximum $1,000, but that's pretty high. So.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Now, Sean has a question for you too.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Cal, so I don't know if you're going to touch on this about exit strategy. So a note is generally by a, you know, private seller, not a, so I'm in Kitchener-Waterloo, so it's not like a big five, like a BMO, a CIBC, a TD, whatever the case may be. So with exit strategies in the US, they're typically like 30-year mortgages, right? Whereas Canada, you've got a 25-year, but a 5-year term. So is this same with notes? So can you run like a 3-year term or a 5-year term? And then if you want to call that note in at the end of the term and say, hey, look, you guys got to go somewhere else?
That's a really good question. So I don't do a lot of creating the notes and the owner financing. I've done 2 in my career, but one thing that if you're creating a note through owner financing, you always want to run your borrower through what's called an RMLO. I think it's Residential Mortgage Loan Originator. And they're a third-party company, and their job is to make sure that your borrower can afford the property. And so if you have something like that where you have a term or a balloon, where after a certain amount of years, they have to pay you out, you need to make sure that you're in compliance with the state's rules for lenders, as well as what's called the Dodd-Frank rules, or whatever legislation that was passed. And these Dodd-Frank legislation, this is something that was put in place, I think, nationwide after the 2008, 9, 10 fiasco, where lenders were just lending on anything. And, you know, they give you like 0 interest rate for 2 years, and then suddenly it's 7 or whatever. And so then they would foreclose on all these borrowers. So they were able to do just whatever they wanted, which caused a lot of the massive bursting of the real estate bubble. And so Dodd-Frank came in, and that put a lot more rules that lenders need to follow to make sure that the borrowers can afford their mortgage. So I recommend, if you're going to do something like that, talk to a real estate attorney in that state, but then have an RMLO vet your borrower to make sure that you're not putting them in a bad situation that they can't afford. So first of all, it's good for the borrower, but if you ever want to sell that note, you want to be able to have basically a stamp of approval by that RMLO showing that you already did that work, so that when you sell that note, an investor that also buys notes is going to be confident that you've done everything right, you followed all of the statutes correctly. So you'll be able to sell that note at a higher price because you did that. So,
Gotcha. Thank you.
all right, any other questions?
I think that is it so far.
Dodd-Frank National, yeah, there we go. But I know Texas, for example, has their own rules as well. So I think just make sure you're checking on individual states as well as Dodd-Frank compliance, because other states might have different rules.
That's only if you're originating the loan.
Right.
Though. Yeah. So if you're
That's
if you're
only
just-
when you're originating.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're just purchasing notes, that should have already been done by the people who originated the note.
Yeah. And yeah, you're not at risk. If you buy a note that wasn't Dodd-Frank compliant, I found out that you're not actually liable if you just buy the note. But it does allow you to sell it at a higher price. So I think it's always good to use an RMLO if you're creating a new note when you owner finance. All right. Exit strategies. So one of the things I love about notes is there's a lot of ways that you can make money or get in and out of a deal. So I'm going to go through a couple of these right now. And this is one, I just wholesaled my first note like 2 weeks ago. The note was a good deal, but I was not going to be putting it in, well, I don't have an IRA or anything, but the amount of amortization or the number of years left on the loan just didn't really make sense for me as an investor. And so what I ended up doing is finding a friend of mine that has a retirement account, and he was planning on just keeping a loan. He wanted to get some cash flow going into his IRA, and he just wanted to keep it until the borrower paid it out. He never really had a plan to ever exit the deal. And so I wholesaled the note to him. It was a very small note. My purchase price was $14,000 or $13,000. And then I ended up just wholesaling it to him for an extra $1,000. So I made $1,000 on the deal. So he paid $14,000 for it. But that's a way to do it. So if you find a note, maybe you don't have any funds right now to buy notes yourself, but if you know other note investors and you know how to seek out good deals, then you can always wholesale notes similar to what you can with real estate. The way you do it's a little bit different, but you can still wholesale a deal to a note investor. Okay. Or maybe you get a accepted bid, but you find something you don't like about the note as you do your due diligence. Well, you might be able to still salvage that and make something on it if there's another note investor that is fine with the deal. So typically, you know, it's obviously up to what your new buyer is willing to pay, but 1 to 3% of the loan amount that your purchase price is about standard, or maybe like a flat fee of $500 plus 1% or 2% is about normal. How I did it, and there's probably other ways to do it, but double closing was the easiest way for me, because the note seller was not really, I told him what I wanted to do and he wasn't really happy with it. And I don't really know why. So I ended up just buying the note, and then I had brand new docs immediately drafted, and I sold the note to my buyer who had it through his IRA. So double closing was really easy. We just had to record the assignment. So basically when you buy a note, there's an assignment of mortgage that transfers the ownership of the note to you. And then if you wholesale it, you just have another assignment. You assign the note to them, and you record both of those with the county in the county records. So it was really easy. We just had to record a couple documents, and then now he was the buyer. So he ended up wiring me the funds, and then I wired the seller the funds. It was really easy. So that's something you can do if you don't have the funds to buy a note. The most obvious exit strategy, don't really need to say, is the borrower is paying, right? So these are performing notes where you're buying them because you want cash flow, you want passive income coming in. And so you can buy performing mortgages. Usually you're going to have to buy them at 80 cents on the dollar, 90 cents on the dollar, sometimes at par, which means like you're buying it for the total amount owing on the loan. And I've even seen some note sellers that are trying to sell it to you for above par because there's a bunch of equity there. So let's say that the house is worth 500,000 and the borrower only, you're buying the note for 100,000. Well, they may want you to pay like 105 or something because of all that equity. And if the numbers work out, I guess some investor is going to do that. I never would, but you will see that people wanting par or even above par for a note. I always like to buy at a discount just because then you're creating a little bit extra profit there, like I was saying, between the amount the borrower owes on it and the amount you actually paid for it. So with these, like I said, you need a servicing company, and there's a lot of them out there. If you guys ever have notes, I'm happy to recommend loan servicers that are good. And basically they're the ones that, like I said, that do all the accounting, they collect the payments, etc. So you need to have that in place. And it's good to have a servicing company involved the whole time. Again, if you plan on selling your note, you're going to have a package that you can give your new buyer, and it's going to have all the numbers accurate. So anytime I'm looking at notes where it's been self-serviced, where the investor's been keeping track themselves, it's harder to know if you trust that. You don't know if the numbers are correct. But if you have a servicing company that's licensed as a loan servicer, it just gives the loan more value and more credibility. You can trust the numbers better, and so you'll be able to sell it for higher. So what happens though if you've got a mortgage where the borrowers aren't paying? So one of the strategies I like to do is work with the borrower to get them back on track. It's never good, I don't think, unless you have to foreclose because you're actually making someone leave their home, right? And who knows if they have kids or whatever, right? So we don't want to just jump on the foreclosure side of things when there's especially people living in the home, and especially if they're trying. You can see that they are trying to keep their home. Maybe they're making sporadic payments here and there. So we want to make sure that we can actually help people stay in their home, and you can make it a lucrative part of your note business by doing so. So you create a nice win-win by working with them and trying to figure out, okay, like what caused you to fall behind? Like maybe they had health issues that caused them to not have enough money to make their payments, or they lost their job, or who knows, like with COVID and stuff, there's so much that happened with people. So maybe they're trying to get back on track, but they've dug this big hole for themselves and they can't seem to get current on their payments. And so the great thing about being a private note investor is that we can work with these borrowers directly, whereas like a big bank like Chase or something, they have no capacity to do that really, because they're so massive. And so we can figure out, like, do we need to maybe forgive all the payments that you've missed, or maybe we move all those payments you owe to the very back end of the loan. So now instead of them paying it off in 2040, now they're going to pay it off in 2045 or something like that. Maybe we need to lower the interest rate to something that they can afford. So there's a lot of flexibility we have to allow people to stay in their homes, and you can buy these non-performing loans at a big discount. So there's ways of profiting by helping these people. Okay. And so this is what we call a trial payment plan. So you put them on a trial plan, and you basically would say, like, look, I'm willing to work with you if you can show me that you can actually do what you say you're going to do. So if you can make your payments at this new rate or whatever we negotiate for 6 to 12 months consecutively, then we will modify that loan for you permanently with the changes that we want. Okay. And so a lot of times, if they're going to be wanting some sort of modification or trial payment plan to get back on track, a lot of times note investors will ask them to put some skin in the game to show that they're serious. So a lot of times you're going to want to ask for like maybe 3-4 months payment up front. Say, look, if you want to stay and you're serious about getting back on track, we can modify this, but you need to come up with some cash up front to show you're serious, and then make your payments for the next 12 months. And then after that, if they've been able to do that and make those payments, then you would modify the loan, and your servicing company or your lawyer will be able to do that for you. And then you can sell that note as a performing note or a reperforming note, because your borrower has showed a nice track record of payments, and that increases the value that you can sell that loan for. So if you wanted to sell it, you could, or you could just keep it. So that's the fun part of being able to work with borrowers. Your servicing company can help you with that as well. But it's nice to be able to sometimes people need only minor changes to be able to stay in their home. So, and this is kind of what I said, you can resell the performing note to another note investor. There's hedge funds that'll pay 80, 90, even par for loans. There's other note investors. There's communities of note investors on like LinkedIn and Facebook. So there's ways of selling them once you get the borrower back on track if you want. Okay, then the other obvious one we don't need to cover much is your borrower may just pay you out, right? They may get a new job somewhere and sell the house. They may finally be able to get their credit score at a or high enough level so that they can refinance with a regular lender. So you never know, you may get paid out at some point. You're going to get all that cash back that you invested. And if you bought it at a discount, that's when you're going to be able to capture that extra equity that you created, or that value that you created when you bought it at a discount. So that's maybe not ideal if you're wanting something that's just going to keep paying you year after year, but it's always a possibility that your borrower can pay you off at some point. All right, so what happens though if the borrower is not playing ball, right? There's a lot of those out there. We have a couple options in front of us. So this could be, let's say that the borrower, you've tried to negotiate with the borrower, tried to see if you could get them paying again, and they just either won't, maybe they won't even talk to you, or maybe they've tried, but they just cannot get back on track. Like they're just in a mortgage that they absolutely can't afford, and it's just not working for them, right? So we could foreclose, which is the next slide. But again, another way that you can create a nice win-win is what we call a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So, or another word is cash for keys. The easier way to picture it is cash for keys. So you can go to them and say, Mr. and Mrs. Borrower, as your lender, as the bank, I have the right to foreclose on this house and sell it off, or take it back, take ownership of this property. If we go through a foreclosure, it's going to show up on your credit for 7 years. It can impact you being able to rent a place, because a lot of landlords check credit. It may impact you in even getting a car loan or a cell phone plan. So it's going to be, a problem for you moving forward if you go through the foreclosure. Whereas we could skip all that, save your credit, and I can give you some money to move out and cover your moving costs, maybe a deposit on a rental, and we can just help you on your way. And we can, wipe our hands clean of this. You can walk away kind of scot-free, essentially. And so as a lender, you have the ability to have that borrower deed the property back to you as the lender. And that's what the deed in lieu means. So typically how we would do that is we would want to give them the cash at the end when they're moving out. So you want to make sure that they're not going to trash the place before they leave. So you probably want to make an agreement that, okay, if you clean this, like broom swept clean, leave it in nice condition when you move out, we'll give you your $3,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is to vacate, hand us the keys, you walk away, and your credit's saved, and now we own the property. So that can be incredibly lucrative for a note investor if there's a lot of equity there. You can get some amazing property deals that way. And now you own the property and you bought it at a really, really big discount. sometimes though, the borrowers, if they know they've got a lot of equity, they would rather not deed the property to you. Like if they know they've got like 200K in equity, they're probably not going to just give you their equity, right? They may, but this is usually for a case where they have a little less equity and they're willing to walk away from that to save their credit. Any questions on deed in lieu? All right. And then the last one is foreclosure. And as I said, this is the easiest thing to do is have a good foreclosure attorney in that state. And I can help connect you. If you're looking at a note in any state, I've got a connection that refers attorneys, and I'm starting to build a list as well. But a lot of times you just want to contact that real estate attorney and say, look, I own this note. The servicing company can provide all of the payment history, all the paperwork, and we're going to have to foreclose because they just have not been paying. Maybe they're not even responding or whatever, but this is not working, and we're going to have to take legal action to foreclose on this loan. And another situation very common is like reverse mortgages or just mortgages where the owners have passed away. And obviously they're not going to negotiate cash for keys. And so maybe if it's an abandoned house, then foreclosure is your only option right from the get-go. Okay. And so every state has different rules and procedures to foreclose, and there's different timelines between different states. So I believe Texas is the shortest foreclosure timeline. You can start foreclosing in Texas in as soon as 21 days delinquent. And then other states like New York and New Jersey, for example, they make foreclosure pretty hard, and it takes a long time, like over a year to foreclose. So that's something I always consider when I'm investing in notes, is like I won't even look at notes in New York and New Jersey. And I want to make sure that I'm factoring in that time to foreclose when I'm running my numbers, and we'll do that next week. But there's basically two outcomes when you're foreclosing. So especially it depends on how much equity the borrower has. So if there's a lot of equity, the house is worth quite a bit more than you are owed on your note, then chances are an investor is going to come and buy that property at the foreclosure auction, right? If there's not a lot of equity, then maybe an investor is not going to buy that, or a buyer is not going to buy it at the auction, because there's sometimes your loan might actually be worth more than the actual value of the home. If you consider like late fees and missed payments and all of the costs that go in, they just pile up and pile up. Maybe you've had to pay the property taxes, so that's going to be added on to the amount that you're foreclosing on. And so it might actually be way above the value of the property. And so in those cases where no one bids on the property, after the foreclosure, you now take the property and you're the new owner of that property. Okay. So that can be a good thing, especially if that's one of your strategies and you're wanting property. It could be a pain if you're not really wanting to own real estate. But those are the two outcomes. It sells at the auction, or now you own it. Okay. And the one good thing about a foreclosure is it clears the title. So if there were other liens on the property and now you own that property because you foreclosed, all of those other liens are wiped away. So you don't have to really worry about them. Whereas a deed in lieu, if there are other liens, you're going to be on the hook for them probably. So you need to make sure you know what's on that property before you are willing to do a deed in lieu and take ownership. So even though you're acquiring the property in both situations, a foreclosure will wipe away those liens and you've got clean title. All right. And then last thing on these exit strategies is there's two different types of foreclosures, mortgage foreclosures. There's judicial foreclosures where the courts handle every foreclosure in the state. It goes through a judge and through the courts. And that typically takes a longer time because we all know how fast the government moves. They're speedy quick, and usually costs more as well. Some of the costs you can actually include in the foreclosure amount. So like, let's say the borrower owes you 50 grand. Some of the foreclosure attorney costs you can actually include so that you can actually recover, let's say 52 grand, but not all the costs. So you may have to come out of pocket for some of the attorney fees. And so that's something you always want to know before you buy a note, is like, what is the typical cost to foreclose in that state? Make sure you can afford it, or if it makes sense for your deal before you buy the note. And typically it's not hard and fast, but east of the Mississippi River, for whatever reason, most of the foreclosure states are judicial on the east side of the Mississippi, and the west side are, a lot of them, most of them are non-judicial foreclosure states. And these are ones where attorneys just handle the foreclosure. So the bank hires a trustee, which is an attorney. They go through the process of foreclosing, and it's a lot faster. And so it's a lot cheaper and faster. And like I said, like Texas, you can have that property sold, or you can own that property in just a few months. Whereas in like New York, for example, like I said, it's a judicial state. It can take you over a year to finally get your money out and foreclose. All right, that was a lot. Those are all the exit strategies. I've got a little bit more here, a couple case studies, and then I'm going to show you guys how to buy or how to find note sellers. But is there any questions up to this point?
Yep.
All right.
Oh, Mark has his hand.
Yeah, so I'm not looking for an exact number in terms of how many of these you've done, but would your experience as an investor say it's worth doing this?
Yeah, so far my experience has been, it's actually been surprising for me. Less competition that I found. So when you're bidding, it's not this massive bidding war that I found in some markets when I was wholesaling houses. And just kind of the ease of completing a transaction is just so much more laid back. So, yep, I like it. And actually, one of the other big things is the marketing cost is way lower. So I used to spend like between $2,000 and $4,000 a month on direct mail or online ads for properties. And really, I do most of my marketing now through LinkedIn, and I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. So that's been a big factor, as well as like my marketing budget went way almost to zero when investing in notes. Okay. So a couple of case studies here. So we did the performing loan. So this is the one the borrower's been paying. I'm going to show you, just kind of give you a feel like what a deal would look like in the various scenarios that we just talked about. So this one is, I'm going to be honest, this one isn't a deal that I did, but it is a case study of one a friend of mine did in Illinois. So these aren't my numbers, but this was a loan modification deal in Illinois. And so this property was, they got it for 11,000, which is pretty low. It's pretty, I mean, for 11,000, that looks like a pretty nice house. But they bought it for 11 and it was non-performing, and that borrower was still living in the home, but they owed 4 years worth of payments, okay, that they'd been missing. And I don't know the backstory of why that mortgage lender hadn't foreclosed until then, but they hadn't. And sometimes that happens. I see some loans right now that are being sold on loan tapes, which are lists of loans. They're like 5 years of no payments, and they still haven't even started foreclosing on them. So I think a lot of these big banks or larger lenders, they just take the easy, low-hanging fruit, and sometimes they just hold on to these assets and do nothing with them before they finally address them and sell them off. So this might be similar. So the value of the house wasn't very high, but they bought it for 11, and they were able to actually work with this lady. She had been paying her taxes and staying in the house the whole time, and she was ready to keep her home. She didn't want to leave. She'd been there a long time. And so she was able to work with the guy that bought the note, and she came up with 5,000 down. And then she started paying again. They worked out a rate and a payment that would work for her. And then I think, from what I remember, they put that balance that she owed for the 4 years, they just tacked it on to the end. And so she was able to get performing again. And so the rate of return on this one was, actually, I didn't write it down, but let's just do it real quick. So 523 a month times 12 months is 6,276 plus the 5,000. So in the first year, that's $11,276 profit, and you divide that by the investment of 11,000. So it's 1.025. So over 100% return on that in that first year. So that's the cool thing about non-performing is you can buy them really low sometimes, and then the outcome, you can kind of work your way and find some really favorable outcomes, either through reperforming or the deed in lieu or a foreclosure. And here's one I just bought about 2 months ago. So just before Christmas. This is in Detroit. And so we just closed on it, and we're transferring servicing from the servicing company that had it to my Covey Financial that I mentioned. And so we're preparing to work with this borrower and see what happens. So this one, we don't know what's going to happen yet, but I'm going to show you the numbers on this guy. So I bought this loan for $33,000, and the borrower is 4 months behind. And she has a very spotty payment history. She'll be okay for a while, and then she'll stop making payments for a while. And that's kind of been her track record over time. She recently stopped a foreclosure because she was able to get some kind of state of Michigan homeowner assistance. And so she got the payments back on track again, and now they've fallen off again. So the value is somewhere between 80 and 100,000 for this property, and we bought it for 33. So there's a nice chunk of equity there that, again, I wouldn't necessarily capture that equity if we were to sell it off, but I know that I'm protected. So if something goes wrong and we have to foreclose, I'm not going to lose my investment because that property is worth way more than the purchase price on that loan. So if she's willing to work with us to get back on track, and we wanted to do a loan modification to try and figure out how we can help her not run into these problems of being able to pay and then not, we could do something like 4 payments up front and then keep her current payments going, which would result in a 17% yield, and keep her in the house and on track. Until we actually start talking to her, we may change and modify things a different way as well. But if we were to negotiate a deed in lieu and just say, look, like you're behind, it's not working, let's have you wipe your hands clean of this and figure out a better scenario for you. We could sell this off, just sell it as is and make 20 grand, which is 61% ROI. And then if we went to the foreclosure route, it's a little bit of a smaller return, about 12,000, and I'll show you why. So if the borrower only owes 48,000 on the loan, that's if we go to foreclosure and we sell the property, that's all that we can recover, right? So she would get any extra equity above that 48,000 would go to her, or she could claim it. We could only foreclose and recover that 48,000. So that's how you get the 12,700 if we foreclose and sell it at the auction. So those are just a couple different scenarios there. Yeah, Mark.
Can you explain how the deed in lieu works on this? Because I'm still a little bit unclear about that.
Yeah, so good question. So next week when we actually analyze some notes, we're going to talk about how to calculate that. But basically what I do is I look at what the as is value. So I used 80,000. And then we would be taking this property back. So we would have some attorney costs, pretty low. So maybe $500 attorney costs. And we would be giving this borrower some money to walk away. So let's just say 5 grand. Right? Now you own the property. I is going to be about 5 grand worth of cleaning property out. There's going to be realtor fees.
Either Cal, either you're freezing or I'm freezing, but I think it's you.
Yeah, I think it's me too. I just got the. Is it better now?
Yeah, right now you're good.
Okay. Yeah, so then I factor in realtor commissions.
Oh, now you're frozen again. You're just getting to the good part. Now he's
Oh.
frozen.
Hmm.
Oh, it's Cal that's frozen, right?
Mm.
Thumbs up if it's Cal, not me. Okay.
All right, let me just leave. I'll come back.
All right. Technology. It's great when it works. How are you guys enjoying it so far? Very fascinating.
Yeah,
Very
very deep.
interesting.
There's a whole lot of stuff you can do beyond like Cal's buying existing notes, but I'm going to teach you guys also down the road how you can create your own notes, and instead of selling them at a discount, how you can actually sell them at a premium. So I'm not sure if Cal's going to touch on that in these 3 weeks, but there's so many things you can do with notes. Oh, here's Cal again. One sec. Let him in. Welcome back. Oh, you're muted, but I can see
Thanks.
the picture moving, so that's good.
All right, hope it's better now.
So far, so good.
Neighbors must have fired up their old computer or something.
Uh,
Okay. Share.
It's Canadian internet. You have to keep winding.
I had to go kick it and wind it back up again. All right. Share presentation.
I was just saying, we're just getting to the good part, and then you left us hanging at the really good part. So
Tune in next week to find out what happens. All right. Okay. So, where were we? Any questions at this point?
we were talking about deed in lieu because that was Mark's question.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, so I'll say that again because I think I cut off. So deed in lieu, I always factor in. I'm going to be selling with a realtor. I don't want to mess with a private sale typically, so I factor in real estate commissions, and then I factor in closing costs, so title insurance and that kind of thing. So I always use about 8.25% of my sale price. So let's use 80,000. And then I think about $5,000 to clean out the property, give it a nice cleaning. Maybe whitewash some paint in there or whatever if it's needed, just touch it up a bit. And then 5,000 to give the borrower as the cash for keys. Okay, maybe it depends on the property value. It could be $3,000, it could be 2,500, but so you want to factor that in, and then some legal costs to do the documents, the deed transfers and stuff, which would be pretty small. So that's how I came up with that 20,000.
So you're basically, it's the 20,000 on top of it's 20,000 as a return on your 33, but you're basically working off of 80. Then there's additional costs that you're paying out of pocket on the deed in lieu. But the deed, it's not spending 20,000, it's netting 20,000.
Yeah.
That's what wasn't clear. So thank you for clarifying.
Sorry about that. Yeah, exactly. And then foreclosure is the same. Like with a foreclosure, I factor in, depending on the state, like I can share some resources with you guys about, it estimates what the attorney fees are per state. So I usually look, so in this case, I'll look at Michigan, and I think it was like on average, it's about 3,500 to foreclose. So I'll take I'm going to assume that an investor is going to buy it at the auction at a discount. Okay. Because most investors will, right? That's what they're looking for. So let's say that the house is worth 80. Let's say that Mike is buying in Michigan suddenly, and he's got his team at the foreclosure auction. So he wants to buy at 70 cents on the dollar. So 0.7 would be 56,000. Okay. So if it's sold for 56,000 at the auction, I'm only entitled to 48,246.88. Okay. Because that's the amount owing on the loan. And we can tack on a few of the foreclosure costs, but that's roughly what it's going to be. So I'm not really worried about the 56,000 sale price because that's not all going to me. I'm only going to be collecting the 48. So then after I pay my my lawyer costs, my foreclosure lawyer, I'm thinking it's going to be about 12,700 in profit after I recoup my 33,000. That's how I got that number. Does that make sense? Now, let's just say that no one bid on the property, or maybe 48,000 was too high for the people that were at the auction, and so no one bids. Well, now I own that property, and then it's more like a deed in lieu where you'd want to hire a realtor, you're going to pay the commissions and everything. So it's kind of the same scenario at that point.
Right, and you mentioned earlier that, but any other liens on the property are basically cleared.
Yeah.
If it comes back to you through foreclosure.
Yeah. Yeah, so we could just sell it off at that point. So one of the things that I've had to sort of wrap my head around a little bit, and it's pretty common for anyone that's started as a real estate investor and then has moved to notes, is kind of how to shift that mindset from a fix and flip kind of a mindset to a bank mindset. So like, again, that equity, like if you see a whole bunch of equity there, you're probably not going to be able to get all that equity. So even if the property's worth $1 million and you're buying a note for 50,000, the chances of them doing a deed in lieu to you are pretty much zero if they've got all that equity. So you can't look at it as like, oh, there's all this equity, this is just going to be the most amazing deal ever. Well, chances are if you foreclose, you're not getting that equity. Okay. So that's one thing to look at, is you're not really chasing the equity so much. You have to look at like how much is owing on that note. And then you're going to, in most cases, when you foreclose, that's how much you're going to be getting back at the end of the deal. So you want to make sure that you're buying it at a discount when it's a non-performing note, so that when you do foreclose, you're not going to lose money. You're going to be able to actually profit somewhat on that. So that's one thing that a lot of people in real estate kind of get wrong, is like they see all that equity and they start salivating, but it's really not your equity. And from my perspective, I think like with notes, it's more of a cash flow. Like that's the thing I think is the pursuit, is like getting borrowers back on track, buying performing notes, and creating those passive streams of income. And then buying the properties and foreclosing, that's kind of like your secondary exit strategy if the others don't work. Because it's always there to protect you, to allow you to still make money. But I think like the main goal shouldn't be to just buy properties and foreclose immediately, and that's your only objective, especially if there's like families and stuff living in them. If it's a vacant house and the people have already walked away, go to town. But just kind of my thoughts on that. And then this graphic down below, I guess I should have used that before I use my example, but this is just one I picked up from PaperStack just a few minutes ago before the presentation. And this is an example. So we'll go to PaperStack in a minute, but this is a first lien that someone's selling. They owe 50K unpaid balance on the mortgage. Okay. They're paying 10% interest on it. And so the property is worth 111,000. And this is in New York, so I wouldn't buy here anyways, but 111,000 property, they only owe 50K. So if you foreclose, you're going to get 50K. You're not getting 111 if it sells at the auction. So that was just my point. The only time that you might be able to capture all this equity is if they did a deed in lieu and just deeded you the property, or if no one bid on the property and you just end up taking it back. But if there's a ton of equity, most investors are going to bid that thing up. All right. So last thing we're going to do, we're just going to talk a little bit about finding note sellers. And the great thing, as I mentioned, is you don't have to market, and it's not expensive to find note sellers. So the most obvious are banks. And I'm going to show you how you can use LinkedIn and start marketing to banks even tonight if you want. Another great source though is loan servicing companies. So if you can find some of the larger loan servicing companies, they have note investors as their clients, and hedge funds and all these big funds. They are servicing loans for these people, and sometimes they want to sell some of their inventory. And so it's a great way to actually find access to a lot of notes is by connecting with these servicing companies and getting on their lists. And then networking with other investors that are note investors at conferences, LinkedIn, and there's lots of ways of also finding owner finance notes in the county records. So looking for deeds of trust that have been created or owner finance notes, and then reaching out to them, the people that created those notes. So quite a few options. I'm going to go over just a couple here and show you how we can do it. So the first one, the most obvious one, is banks. And there are thousands of banks across the US. And a lot of the big guys, Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, you're never going to get into. But there's lots of little small lenders across in every single state that you can reach out to. And so the key here, and this is the part, this is the gold, is you're not going to be able to just go to your local branch and be like, hey, I want to buy some notes. Who do I talk to? You're going to get nowhere. So you need to look for people that have these job descriptions. These are the folks at the banks that handle the sale of notes. Okay. Secondary marketing, special assets manager, whole loan trader, or chief credit risk officer. So how do you reach these people? Well, I'm going to show you how you can do it through LinkedIn. And then you can either send them a message on LinkedIn when you find them. You can call the bank and ask for that person. Or you can try and get their email address from LinkedIn or from calling the bank and then send them an email. Okay. So let's go do that. Let's just do, I'm going to stop this presentation and. Okay. Can you guys see my LinkedIn? Yep. Okay. So we're going to go search. We're going to go, I've got to move this Zoom thing out of my way here. Okay. So we're going to go and search secondary marketing. Okay, so that's the job description. We're going to go to people. There's 80,000 results. So maybe we want to make it, let's just go like someone, what state's someone from? Jonathan, you're from California, right? Okay. So California, United States. So there's 3,200 results. So we could then, this guy, where is he with? I won't waste a lot of time, but okay. Secondary marketing manager, Sovereign Lending Group. Looks like that's where he is. Was. You guys see where he's working? I don't see it. Anyways, so one thing we can do is connect with him, send him a message. And I got a script here in a second. But basically just say, hey, Sefer, I'm a note investor. I'm buying for my own portfolio. Just want to know if you guys have any assets that you're selling off, any non-performing or performing notes I'd love to take a look at. And send him a message, okay? Let's go to this guy. So this guy's retired. Royal Pacific Funding, Thomas. So maybe instead, or we could send him a message, but then we can go and look for the phone number for Royal Pacific Funding and ask for Thomas. I don't know how you say his last name, but ask for him, or you could even just say, I'd like to speak with someone in your secondary marketing department and see who they get you to, okay? So you got to do a little bit of cold calling, and it's a little scary, but after you do a few, you start to realize it's not that bad. And so you can spend time doing that every day. And there's thousands. So if we were to go and search special assets, people, Hickory, North Carolina. He's a manager, special assets at ALG Senior. Jared Smith, Fulton Bank. Okay. This looks like he's commercial. So if you're looking for commercial notes, you probably wouldn't want to be asking him for residential stuff. So that's that. And it takes a while. You got to do it every day to start building up a network. You're going to get a lot of people that don't ever answer your messages or return your calls. But if you're persistent and you create a system of following up and reaching out multiple times, over time, you start building that list of people that actually have stuff to sell. Sometimes they'll direct you to a different person in their department to talk to. They'll give you their email addresses if you're talking to them. And so I also create a database in my email marketing software of asset managers. And I've programmed 12 email messages that just automatically send middle of each month. And each one's a little bit worded different on basically just saying, hey, I'm looking for notes. Do you have anything, especially non-performing loans that you're wanting to sell? And just touching base. And it's funny because I was getting a whole bunch of declines and no answers. And then just this year, after New Year's, I just sent out a batch of emails and I'm starting to get more people that are selling stuff. So I feel like things are turning around right now and the banks are having more stuff to sell. So it feels like it's a good time, even compared to about a year ago. So now,
sorry.
Yep. Yeah.
I was just gonna say Michael Matthew has his hand up. Just not sure.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, Cal. Wondering what email marketing software you use.
I've been using Keep right now, which I think used to be Infusionsoft.
That's right.
Call it
Yeah.
Keep. Yeah. So now I'm going to show you guys a really awesome app so that you don't actually have to message people manually every day. It's called Octopus CRM, and it's a Google Chrome extension. I'm not sure if it works with other browsers, but I'm going to show you this application here. So let's say we've got our search results, and I'm going to just narrow it down. We'll use California again. Actually, let's use Florida. So about 1,000 people, okay? So what you can do with this cool app, and I think it's about $49 a month, something like that, is you open it up and you can create campaigns. And so you can create a list in Octopus. And so say I want to create a list of special assets managers, okay? Bank managers with the job role special assets. So I've created a campaign already, got lots of different ones, but special assets. So I've already got one here. And then you can basically send this entire list or however many results you want to this CRM system. So I'm going to send, let's just send, I'm only going to send 5 because I don't want it to take too long, or let's just do 3. So it's going to send these 3 names to my Octopus CRM account. And then you can go down here and it says, well done. You transferred 3 out of 3 profiles. Okay. So then I've got all these different lists. So I've got a list here for note investors. Right now I have 173 people that I pulled from LinkedIn. But if I go to special assets, it added them to a list I already had going, but I have 638 people still to connect with, okay? And so what you can do is set up a message. So I've just got, it just says, hi, and then it automatically pulls their first name or whatever you want. I just wanted to see if you might have any performing or non-performing notes for sale. I'm looking for first liens on residential assets in most major markets, buying from my own portfolio. I'd love to see what you have. And then I got my phone number, and then I've got a link to a video of me just explaining who I am, what I do, and what I'm looking for, like a minute-long video. So then LinkedIn has limits on how many messages you can send each week. So I find from my account that I have about 30 per day. So I'm just going to launch this. And now while we're finishing up this webinar, Octopus is just going to send each of these people, and it spreads them out every couple seconds so it doesn't flag LinkedIn. And it just sends the message out to everyone. And hopefully I'll get some responses. So that's a really great way of automating using LinkedIn to find asset managers. And you can use it for note investors. You can use it for real estate investors. So if you're looking for buyers for your buyers list, you can put in your city or your state and find people that have marked their status as a real estate investor and send them a message, etc. So that's Octopus. Okay, I know we're getting long, so there's one other thing I want to show you guys on how to find notes. If any of you guys end up using Octopus, I would love it if you use my referral link and pay like a little bit, and that would be awesome, but no need to otherwise if you don't want to. I'm going to share this whole presentation if you guys want with the Wolfpack, if you want to review any of it. So that should be posted probably. Hey, Mike, or you guys will share it if they want.
Yeah, we will definitely be posting. As long as if you send it, we will post. Oh, we're gonna send this entire recording, but if you want to send like the slides or anything else, just send it to me.
I'll send you the slides, because if you guys want to copy and use this script, you can keep my name on there. That would be awesome, but you probably want to change that.
Change it to Mike Wolf.
Change it to Mike Wolf. Make sure you change it to Mike. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what you do. So you can use that script for asset managers in Octopus. And then the other thing is there's some online platforms, and you guys are welcome to explore them, but I'm going to show you a good one, a great one, I think, to get started investing in notes. And I also recommend you follow these guys' podcasts, because they're really short episodes and they're really good. It's called Paper Stack. So these are just two note investors that started this business. They're in Florida, and they wanted to make a platform that connected sellers and buyers in a really streamlined, easy way to buy notes. And they've done a really amazing job. And so what you can do is just check every couple of days, or get your VA, and you just check for notes that have been listed for sale by other note investors. Okay. And you can clarify, what you're looking for, which states, what types of loans, performing or non, first or seconds, etc. But basically, these are all the notes that are for sale right now on PaperStack. And I'm not going to dive into anything this week, but next week, maybe we'll break something down from here. Here's just one, Kansas City. Okay. So they usually give you picture, just one or two pictures of the property, but they break down all the details of the loan that you're going to be buying. They have an offer price that they want, and we'll go through all these numbers and what they mean and how you can analyze whether it's a good deal or what your bid would be next week. But if you guys want, you can just go and kind of cruise around PaperStack and set up an account and just see what kind of assets they've got for sale. Okay. And the cool thing about PaperStack is if you're brand new to note investing, the system holds your hand from start to finish. So it allows you to make a bid. You can get all the due diligence you need from the seller through PaperStack. So they'll submit, title searches and payment histories and the notes that they have about the borrower. All of that can be uploaded through the platform. And then it guides you through the entire process of funding. So you can actually fund the note through PaperStack. They have a third-party lawyer or attorney that reviews all of the documents to make sure there's no issues. So they basically walk you through the entire purchase process. They'll send you the paperwork once it's all signed, so you can keep for your records, and it's all done for you. So I really recommend, even just to get your feet wet, maybe buying something through PaperStack, just so you can see the process and not make any mistakes, because it's just so well laid out for you. So I think that's about it. We've been going a long time. I'm happy to answer any questions, though.
Nope, Mark
No,
doesn't.
I actually don't have a question. I have a resource I wanted to share with you, since you're using LinkedIn to find people.
Sure.
So I'm using LinkedIn as my primary marketing tool for my coaching business. That's where my clients are, and I have a mentor that I work with. And one of his mentors is a guy in the Netherlands named Richard Vanderbroek.
Okay.
Vanderbrook. And he just released a report that his team works on where spent a year studying like 35,000 profiles and what things increase your visibility and what things decrease your visibility based on all the things that's going behind the scenes with the LinkedIn algorithm.
Oh,
And
cool.
it's free. You can just go to his profile and get the link to download the report. I actually just started reading it today. My LinkedIn coach distilled some of it, but I like looking through it on my own. And it's really fascinating in terms of who's using LinkedIn,
Yeah.
who's posting content, who's not, what gets you a 20% increase, what gets you a 60% increase, what takes away. So if you're not well versed in it and you want like a quick overview, like I've implemented 5 or 6 different things in the last 2 weeks alone that I wasn't doing before. I just put up a kind of a more general interest poll on my profile that has nothing to do with my business yesterday, and I hit like 1,000 impressions inside of a day, which
Wow.
in the new algorithm, which they changed dramatically in September, it's like better actually than some of my specific content posts around coaching and job change and career changing and stuff. So I just wanted to share that. It's Richard
Yeah.
Vanderbrook on LinkedIn.
Awesome. I will definitely download that report. That's great.
And
That's
happy to
excellent.
chat. And you've been so generous with all of your knowledge. If you want to chat with how any of that stuff's working with someone who's more deeply using it as a marketing tool for my non-real estate activities, I'm happy to have a call with you.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Mark.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments, links, anything? All right, Cal, you did a great
All
job.
right.
That's super
Thank
informative.
you.
I learned a ton.
Well, I'm glad. That's great. If any questions come up or anyone that's been watching the recording, feel free to reach out to me. I'm in the Wolfpack group. So if you have questions after watching it, I'm happy to answer them.
That is excellent. Oh, Melanie, are you waving goodbye or you have a question for us?
I actually have a question. I couldn't find the raise your hand button all of a sudden for some reason, but so I just did it.
That's what Mark does. He does it the old fashioned way too. So it's all good.
Yeah. Well, good to see you again, Cal.
Melanie,
Thanks for coming.
you as well. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I was wondering at the beginning, Mike said that you're focusing on performing notes more now, whereas in the beginning it sounded like you were maybe focusing on
No, I
non-performing,
think Mr. Wolf was incorrect.
I lied.
I'm focusing on both.
I think at one point though, we're at one point were you only doing performing, or maybe that's all I saw coming because
I think it just had some. Yeah, no, I'm looking for
I spy
both.
on my students. I spy on my students. So I watch your videos, I watch your emails, and I every time I saw an email with a property on it, it was always a performing note from what I could see.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely open. I'd rather have performing if it makes sense, because they're easy. But the problem is just buying them at the right price sometimes is hard. So, yeah.
Cool.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was wondering, is just pros and cons of each or where you're focusing. And so, yeah.
That's a good question. So there are big, huge like hedge funds and stuff out there that typically will buy, like Wall Street type outfits that will buy like $5 million and above, like pools of notes. So they're willing to pay like par or very high price and get very small yields because they're buying so much. So some of that stuff, yeah, you get outbid, especially if it's performing. But some of the smaller valued notes, which are more in our price range, right? Like under 100 or under 200,000. Those guys, those big outfits kind of ignore that stuff. And so you can actually make bids that make sense sometimes. But performing still, you're going to be looking at probably your bids are going to be at least 80% of what the unpaid balance is. So if the borrower owes 80 grand, you're going to have to be, making your bid at 80% of that, whatever that be. Sometimes even 90. So for some people that's fine and the yield is high enough. It kind of just depends on what kind of a return you need and you're willing to accept. But if you're using, like, say, a funding partner or a joint venture partner where you've got cost of money, like you have to pay someone for the money you're using, then you probably need higher yields. And so in that case, maybe non-performing is a better way to go because you can buy them at bigger discounts. So.
Okay, great. And then
yeah.
I was also wondering, are you still working with Scott Carson, or are you being mentored along with this? Or are you kind of just doing it on your own, or?
So I had mentorship from Scott and now I'm just kind of more on my own. So yeah, I still reach out to him from time to time, or if I have a question about a deal, I still reach out to him. He's a really good resource. So, and I recommend, he has a 3-day note weekend. That's really good. He has a lot of value and he gives away like a lot of information that I think a lot of other people would only give away if you signed up for like a huge, mentorship package. And he gives away a lot of good information too. So
Yeah, I've actually done
Yeah.
1 or 2 of his weekends on that. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then those paper stack guys too, like their podcast is really good. The owner of that company, he's been in the note business for I think 30 years. And so he's just super smart. I listen to almost all their podcasts, so you can learn a lot that way too for free. So
Awesome. Yeah, I really like this note investing world and learning
yeah,
about
it's
it.
just,
So.
it's fun. And it's just another strategy, right? Like another way to, the more you learn about real estate, you just got another tool in that toolbox, even if it's to create a note and sell it on a deal that, maybe goes wrong and you can't sell it the way you thought you could. You can create a note and sell it, or keep the note. So it's good to understand how this whole side of the business works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thanks again. Great presentation.
Yeah, no problem. And Melanie, I need to apologize. I think I sent you some emails because you're a music teacher and my daughter's piano teacher is Melody. And I think I sent some emails to you about piano lessons. And
Oh, really?
then I realized it was you. So
Just today?
a couple months ago.
Oh, I don't think I ever got him. Darn it. Maybe it went
Oh,
to
yeah.
spam or something.
Maybe. I was like, oops.
But that's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Any other
All right.
questions, comments? All right. Well, Cal, thanks again. That was a great
Yeah.
presentation. I'm looking forward to week 2. And we're going to be back here next Monday, same time, 6 p.m. Mountain. And next week's going to be 2 nights in a row because the next day we have Q&A. So look forward to seeing y'all then. But of course, if you have any questions in the meantime, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, so the weekend before Cal's third presentation in US, the clocks spring ahead an hour. So it's still the same time. Do you guys spring ahead in Calgary, or do you stay the same when the clocks change?
Calgary changes also. So
Yep.
All right, same weekend?
yeah,
Yep.
everything's exact
All
same.
right, cool, thanks.
So confusing. I hate when that happens. But anyway, thanks again, Cal. Good to see all of you guys. And like I said, next week we'll be here Monday and Tuesday. In the meantime, if you have any questions for me, reach out to me. Cal's part of the Wolfpack group, so you can reach out to him as well. And we'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Hi, Melody.
Hi, Judith. Long time no see.
I know.
Good to have you here.
I know. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
See
Good
you
night.
guys. Thanks, everyone.